everyone, this is Cindy, Marketing Manager from G-AsiaPacific. First of all, I would like to thank you for attending our workshop. We all know that workshops and webinars is getting common and people are feeling bored. But I can assure you today's workshop is going to be amazing. It's vital to know where you are and where you are headed on your cloud journey, how to unlock the right recipe for success, especially after the pandemic situation. This workshop brings together all the essential information to enable the right cloud journey for your organization. You will also discover how to safeguard your business to protect sensitive data. So before the session starts, let's set some house rules. Please enjoy your coffee and mute your microphone during the session. And if you have any questions, please leave it in the chat. Any questions will be well entertained. So let me do a quick introduction of our company. G-AsiaPacific was born in 2008 and we are AWS Certified Advanced Partner. In last year, we was rewarded as AWS Consulting Partner of the Year in Malaysia. We have been serving over thousands of customers ever since. Some big companies like 7-Eleven, McDonald's, Padini, Chin Hin, the H Markets, TF Velumark, and also the Tatai Langkawi. So let me go through the agenda today. So we're going to have welcome and introductions, cloud migration. We all know that not just life, business have challenges too, right? So we are going to discuss what are the critical needs for continued digitalizations and also the AWS advantage. We just want to know cost saving. I know everybody loves cost saving. So let's see how AWS work the magic. And we are going to share the migration workflow, also case study, Q&A section, and we'll be closing. So let me introduce our speaker of the day. So we are going to have Miguel and Alvin from G-AsiaPacific for the sections. Let's welcome Miguel.
Hi, my name is Miguel and I'm the Solution Architect for G-AsiaPacific. Today I'll be talking about cloud migration. Within cloud migration, there will be a few subtopics such as today's challenges, the critical need for continued digitalization, as well as how we usually help our customers go through the migration process and the migration process itself, what we usually do during migration for our customers. And on top of that, I will provide a couple of case studies so that you can get some ideas and references on what we have previously done for customers and how it can help you meet your business requirements. So the first thing I will talk about today is today's challenges, which is the challenges faced by companies and organizations today when trying to deal with their IT infrastructure, whether it's on-premise or on cloud. So the first issue is data consolidation, which is basically the process of taking all your data from multiple sources. Say you have data from a structured database like MySQL, spreadsheet files, and even NoSQL databases. You want to apply analytics to drive insights to help you make better decisions. So one of the challenges that is typically faced when implementing data consolidation on-premise these days is data spread. This is because most organizations start off small, and as they grow, they add on more and more resources, more files, more file types, more databases, more servers. And at the end of the day, this becomes a complex mess, because when you add on this stuff, generally companies will disregard their existing infrastructure and just add things on as they go. So if you need this, you add this on, and if you need that, you add that on, and then in the end of the day, you get a really complex IT infrastructure that makes it hard to manage, hard to upgrade, and hard to scale. So this will make your IT infrastructure very decentralized, and this is where like cloud can help you consolidate all your data into one place. Another challenge you might face is that most organizations have limited resources, especially smaller organizations, because not every company, as we know it, have the tools, the hardware, the manpower, the stuff with the required skill sets required to prevent security issues, deal with data spread, and even like properly manage an IT infrastructure. So acquiring all those things, the people, the hardware, the tools, it's a fairly expensive task. So this is where bringing in outside help like using AWS, migrating to cloud, and going through AWS partner like us will save you the cost and effort of actually consolidating data on your own. And on top of that, we also have security challenges, but Alvin will go over that later in this webinar. And the next point will be scalability, which means how well an infrastructure scales. This can be adding more resources and upgrading them when needed, and also removing those resources when not needed. The issue with traditional IT infrastructures is that when you want to scale up, you have to procure the hardware or purchase the hardware. You have to have the hardware on standby when upgrading the infrastructure. So whether you're scaling up or out, your hardware, you need it on hand first. And then procuring this hardware is actually a huge cost considering the price of server hardware these days. So this kind of makes things tough for smaller organizations that don't have the funds to spare on buying decent server hardware or hardware for your whatever services and you are trying to achieve. So scaling down the resources is an even more impossible task because well, the hardware that is already purchased is most of the time is already well purchased. You can't get rid of it. So once it's scaled up in traditional infrastructure, you kind of can't scale down that much. So it's not a practical solution compared to in cloud where you can scale up and scale down as you need. And when you scale down those resources, you don't have to pay for them because you basically decrease the size of your servers, for example. Say your company is in like a stage of rapid growth and you're unsure of like how many servers, how much storage capacity, and what other kind of resources you need ahead of time, or if there's like a sudden surge of users into your web page and it starts to fail because of the huge load, and you want to upgrade your servers right there and then to solve this issue. In a traditional infrastructure, you would have to purchase the hardware first if you do not have them on hand already, and you need to install those hardware, those resources, and that will take up time and cost. And if your servers is facing downtime while you're doing that, then you will be facing downtime until the resources are properly installed and everything. So here's where you can see like the benefits of switching to cloud services and resources, because with AWS you can choose what kind of hardware, operating system, and software you need, and you pay a monthly fee for these resources depending on your usage, kind of like renting the resources. And also upgrading the resources is easier because you can do it seamlessly within the console within minutes. And also AWS will allow you to scale your resources as needed using like specific triggers or schedules. So you can say start your instance at this time and shut it down at this time, or scale it up when a certain threshold or CPU utilization or memory utilization is hit. Or if you no longer need the resources, you can just take it down and you no longer have to pay for it. You don't have to deal with like selling the resources or disposing them. And the last thing about today's challenges will be disaster recovery, which is exactly what it says. It's recovering after a disaster has happened. So usually in a fail-back scenario, you have three kinds of disasters, which is natural disasters like earthquakes or floods, technical failures like power failure or like network connectivity issue, or and the third one is human action, which is accidental or purposefully done misconfigurations, human errors, and malware, hacking, those kind of things. So each of these categories of disaster can span over a single server, many servers, one account, many accounts, or even like an entire region. For example, if an earthquake hits a data center or a flood hits a data center, and you have a multi-zone backup disaster recovery strategy, you have a multi-zone disaster recovery strategy, and then you'll be safe. But to implement like a multi-zone or multi-region disaster recovery plan on your traditional IT infrastructure, you kind of have to purchase a second set of hardware. You need to own or rent out location where you can store those hardware and store those resources as a backup, and you must make sure that backup environment is always running, so that in case of emergency you can fail over to that infrastructure. But that is very expensive if you were to implement it in a traditional method, which is to purchase and rent your own place. But if you use AWS, you can easily do this by just provisioning instances in another region, for example. You can even create like a multi-availability zone or a multi-region disaster recovery strategy, and you can fail over and fail back almost seamlessly using like services like Cloud Endure, for example. And the next part will be the critical need for continued digitalization. Like why does your company need to continue digitalization? Firstly, there's the pandemic. As we all know it, after the pandemic hit, many companies start to realize that using cloud services, using more modern IT infrastructures is an important task. It's an important thing, because they face many setbacks and issues dealing with the downsides of traditional IT infrastructure. So employers these days are looking for new ways to create a more productive environment, more productive improvements using digital technology to help employees become more effective and maybe do their roles while working from home, not just at the office. So Amazon has some services that can help you do this, such as Amazon Workspaces and AppStream. Workspaces being a virtual desktop environment that will allow you to provision and use virtual desktops that provide access to required documents, applications, and resources. And then there's Amazon AppStream, which is basically an app hosting service that allows you to host almost any desktop applications to users via a web browser. So your users can just use a web browser to access any applications that you host on the Amazon AppStream, and it allows you to host almost any desktop applications as well. Next, we have security, which is always a requirement for any IT infrastructure, whether it's on cloud or on premise. For security, these hackers, malwares are getting more advanced and advanced these days, and we'll have to keep up in terms of security. Otherwise, if you get left behind, you're at risk of getting a security breach or like getting some sort of malware or ransomware on your environment, and that's not a good thing. So you would want to always implement the latest and best security strategy consistently across all your infrastructures, all your networks, applications, data, whatever services or service providers that are being used by your organization. So in this case, AWS provides a wide variety of security services that will help you improve your cloud security. So if you're running your infrastructure on AWS, you can actually utilize all these services. Some are free, some are paid, depending on which one you use. One example will be AWS WAF, which is a cloud firewall, web application firewall that allows you to specify like various rules to control access and monitor HTTPS requests on your AWS environment. You can you choose to block or allow specific IP addresses depending on the rules, and also like block suspicious activities, for example. And the next the last the topic for the continued digitalization will be consumer trends. These days, people are more comfortable using mobile applications and doing things online. So maybe 10 years ago, doing everything online or using a mobile app is not really the way people will go, and it's not really a feasible business decision. But these days, people are getting more and more used to it, and various sorts of applications have come up that help you do everything from paying bills to like scanning receipts and whatnot. For example, you can use Amazon Text Track for optical character recognition. Say you want to scan some documents to input into your digital form, for example, from a handwritten form to a to a more digital format. You can use this Amazon Text Track. It's a OCR service. It will help you convert written text, printed text, digital text from like PDFs and images, text files, and convert it into text basically. And there's also Amazon Transcribe, which is an automatic speech recognition ASR service, which helps you automatically convert speech into text. So you can either get someone to help you implement this onto your AWS account, and you can just upload files, and it'll trigger a function in the cloud to automatically, for example, a Lambda function to automatically call this API and process it for you, or you can integrate it into your own application using the API provided by Amazon, by AWS. Next, we have the AWS Advantage, which is basically the advantage and benefits you get by using AWS as compared to other cloud services and other methods you could think of. So first, the subtopics in this part will be the business drivers to migrating your workload, and that AWS migration creates value beyond cost savings. So it's not just about cost savings, there's much more to it than that. So first we have the business drivers for migrating to the cloud. These are some of the reasons that we could think of that why you want to migrate to AWS cloud, how it could benefit you. For example, in agility and staff productivity. So when using cloud infrastructure, you can focus your workforce around your business objectives, achieving your business objectives and goals, and not waste time dealing with all the unnecessary distractions like dealing with hardware requirements and IT infrastructures. You can focus your entire workforce on like achieving whatever your business is doing, and leave the IT infrastructure to Amazon and their partners like G-AsiaPacific. And the second thing, it will be data consolidation, which is how people at your organization can save time on managing and maintaining data centers and the data in the data centers, which is especially important in larger corporations. As I mentioned in the couple of slides earlier, usually larger corporations who have already expanded have usually added on lots of data and data sources onto their original infrastructure, and this will cause some complex mess which will be needed to sorted out if you were to scale out or perform an upgrade, for example. And then there's outsourcing changes or the end of life for hardware and software. On the cloud platform, if you were to switch out hardware and update software, it's a very simple task. You just go through the console. Within minutes, you can actually just upgrade your hardware to a newer version, or maybe update your software depending on what services you are using on AWS. Can be done within minutes. Switching out an old hardware for an up-to-date hardware on like a traditional IT infrastructure, for example, is a very tedious task. You have to make sure that the new hardware is set up properly, and then the old hardware is compatible, and you have to run a migration or some sort of way to cut over to the new environment without having much downtime. But on cloud, this is not the case. It's usually very simple and very cheap. And the best part is you don't have to deal with the disposal and the management of the old hardware as well. Other than that, going global quickly for organizations and companies that are planning to expand across regions, maybe expand globally. This makes it easy because AWS has data centers all across the planet on various regions. And if you were to open a branch, say in a different region like the United States or in Australia, and you can easily deploy instances and services and duplicate your entire infrastructure to those regions, or even like make a cross-region infrastructure plan. And then we have improved security and resilience. Many AWS services provide some sort of service level agreement that states maybe a specific minimum uptime. For example, on Amazon S3, they have 11 nines, which is 99.99999, basically 11 nines of uptime in the SLA. And AWS also supports various like high availability configurations or HA configurations, and also security services that will improve the security and the resilience of your infrastructure. And then there's digital transformation, which this enables basically the modernization of traditional businesses that allows easier expansion in the future. So like I said, if you were to use a traditional IT infrastructure and just add stuff on, it will be very complex to manage. But in the cloud, you can easily visualize how your configuration is done. Because it's all done in one console, you can easily take a look at what is your existing infrastructure, how can you add things on. That makes it easier for you to shift your business into a more flexible one. You can how you can upgrade in the future and expand without too much changes to your existing infrastructure. Then we move on to cost reduction, which is basically one of the main benefits of cloud, because there's so many ways you can save costs just by switching over from a traditional IT infrastructure to a cloud one. You can save up on the manpower required to manage and maintain infrastructure. For example, you don't have to have as much staff dealing with your IT infrastructure as you would on a traditional one. And the total cost of ownership, the lifecycle, managing the lifecycle of infrastructure, the operational cost, even the ability to scale the resources according to your needs will save you costs, because you don't have to constantly pay for a large server when you only need the large specs, maybe one day a week. You can just do that, and then for the remaining days of that week, you can scale down your instance to a smaller size to save costs. There's also some unseen costs that might not seem related at first. For example, if you run an e-commerce business and you reduce your downtime by switching to AWS and using their services that have specific SLA, you are also reducing the amount of losses from the downtime. So indirectly, you're actually saving costs and cutting losses. Lastly, there will be IoT and AI or ML, artificial intelligence or machine learning. These days, like, everyone is into this Internet of Things, this machine learning and artificial intelligence technologies, and almost every large company is using it for some sort of predictive analytics, making their services much more efficient, increasing productivity of their staff. It can be used for like so many things. So AWS will provide you a large variety of services that works with IoT, artificial intelligence, and as well as machine learning. With this, you can actually evaluate like which services that is the most suitable for you to achieve your business needs, and you can like maybe take a look at the catalog of what AWS has to offer and how it can help you, and then you can make a decision on like which service that you that fits best into your business. There's no shortage of Amazon services that is available for you to use. There's such a huge they have such a huge catalog of services that it will take maybe a couple of days for you to like take a look and understand all of the services, and maybe even then you might miss a few. So if you're interested in like using AWS services for IoT, AI, or machine learning, you can just take a look at the catalog, and who knows, you might find something that you're interested in that can improve your business workflow. Okay, so the next subtopic will be that AWS migration creates value beyond cost savings. So on top of cost savings, which is the first part of this, you save cost on the total cost of ownership, which is basically the cost of adopting, operating, and provisioning cloud infrastructure. By moving to the cloud, you can actually save a huge sum because you don't have to purchase the hardware infrastructure and all the costs related to it in all at once. You can use a service and pay it as like a subscription, something like renting or paying for say you pay for how you pay for Google Drive monthly. You pay for a specific amount of storage, and if you don't have you don't have enough storage, you can pay more to get more storage, kind of like that. But this applies to compute, storage, and as well as other services like firewall and network data transfer. So for example, in the slide it says that GE states that there is a 50% reduction in total cost of ownership, 50% or more reduction in total cost of ownership just by moving to cloud. I'm not sure how true that is, but you do save a lot just by moving from a traditional on-prem infrastructure to a cloud infrastructure. And then there's staff productivity, which is you save time on the configuration and provisioning of what resources are needed. Basically, like if you have a team doing video editing for some event and you need some additional compute power and you want to upgrade your servers so that the specifications can match your use case, and maybe you even need a graphic card that is to be added onto the server so that your team can do their task. On a traditional infrastructure, you need to purchase those stuff or install those stuff onto the server, and that's a very costly and time-consuming task. Whereas on cloud, all of this can be done within minutes, right away. You can increase the instance size. You can even attach a graphics card using AWS Elastic Graphics, and this can be done just within a couple of minutes. Say you need a graphics card for a couple of hours, you attach it, you pay, and then after you're done with using the graphics card, you detach it, and then you stop paying for it. So you only pay for what you use, and there's nothing extra that is being charged for. It's just what you use. And when all of this is done, you can actually like downscale the instance to a smaller size back again, and like I said, remove the graphics card. You will save a lot of cost that way, rather than purchasing an entire graphics card to insert to your instance and have it run all the time. And the best part is you don't even have to have a dedicated team to do this. All it takes is maybe one person, and it barely takes up any time. And then we go to operational resilience. Like I said, certain AWS services have set SLA, a specific SLA, service level agreement, that states maybe 99.999% chance of 99.999% uptime rate, so that 0.00001% chance of downtime only per year. This is a very important thing because for most of the modern companies these days, especially if you're running like an e-commerce business, it's going to be very costly for you if the server goes downtime for even a single day. So they also provide like some disaster recovery strategies that are cross availability zones and even cross regions that will help you ensure that your environment is always up, and even if it goes down, there's always a backup for you to fail over to, so that you can fail over within a couple of minutes without having to worry about your instance being down for your environment being down for too long. So as the slide says, there's like over 500 hours a year of server configuration time saved. Critical workloads run in multiple AZs and regions for robust DR. So this is all true about AWS. And the last part will be business agility, which is basically deploying new features, applications faster, and reducing errors. Say you want to deploy a new application, and previously you might have to deal with all the hassle of managing and securing the hardware to run a host application. On cloud, you just need to know the requirements of the application, and you can easily select the suitable services that will cater to those needs. Now we move on to the migration workflow. So this part will be me talking about what is our migration process and how we usually help our customers migrate to AWS Cloud. And within the migration process, there is the assess stage, the mobilize stage, and the migrate and modernize stage or phase. And also there will be security in the cloud and how G-AsiaPacific enhances security for their customers. This part will be done by Alvin later on. Okay, the first part in the migration process will be the assess. We'll be assessing your infrastructure basically. So we figure out what can and what cannot be moved and what is the most suitable way to move everything. All of this will be done during assess stage. So we basically just take a look at what you have, what are your business goals, and we create a plan, a migration plan on how we can migrate it to the cloud using what information we have. For this migration, okay, the first part of the assess will be the migration readiness assessment. These are the key areas of focus. We will take a look at the customer's data sources. We will recommend the customers to do some self-service and guided assessments depending on their requirements. And we will also have some conversations with the stakeholders, which are people who are in charge and responsible for the application or the IT environment that we are migrating. So the focus of the assessment is for business people, governance, and we will take into consideration the technical platform, security, and operations of the environment. So for the business part, we have the business capabilities assessment and business value realization, which is basically talking with our customers about cost savings and budget, their business goals, and basically what you want to achieve, what the customer wants to achieve with by migrating to the cloud. Say they have a specific cost savings idea, or they have a specific budget in mind and they want to achieve a specific goals. We will help, like we'll take this into consideration to come up with our migration plan so that we can try to hit their business goals, at the same time also going below their budget. Of course, there will be usually a minimum amount of budget required for cloud migration, but of course we'll try to hit as close as possible to the budget. As long as it's a reasonable budget, it should be possible. And next will be people, which is basically the roles and readiness. How ready are the people at your organization, the customer's organization, to adopt a cloud infrastructure? Do they have the knowledge necessary for on how things work, or is it going to be completely managed by G-AsiaPacific, for example? That is all up in this. That is all discussed in this part of the discussion for of the assessment. And next we have governance. The governance, which is basically prioritization and control, like who has control over the environment. For example, if the customer's end does not have the people capable of managing a cloud infrastructure and they need someone to do it, we can basically take control of the environment, and we will be the one who manage it for the customer, instead of having people who have no prior experience in cloud to manage it and risk something going wrong. We can actually help you to manage your IT infrastructure, and all you have to do is focus on your business goals, which is maybe your applications. And if you have your application vendor to develop and upgrade your application and manage your application, we can also work with your application vendor to help you achieve your basically business goals in outsourcing your entire IT infrastructure. So during the assessment, we will focus on the technical part, which is the capability assessment, the platform, which is the applications infrastructure. We'll take a look at your applications and your infrastructure, the security, the risk and compliance, which is there any compliance that you have to meet, maybe a PCI DSS compliance or something like that, and also the risk of migrating to cloud, and what are the risks that we will be facing? Is there any downtimes? What is the downtime that is deemed appropriate for a migration and whatnot? We will discuss on that during this phase. And also the operations, like whether it will be a hybrid cloud environment, a dynamic cloud environment. Maybe there are some resources that you still need or want to have on-prem, and you still need some resources on cloud, and you need some sort of data sync between the on-prem environment and the AWS cloud environment. We can discuss about that as well. Maybe set up a site-to-site VPN connection between your on-premise and AWS cloud. And then last of all, you will get the readiness assessment result. We will completely understand like how what are your business goals and everything, and we will work towards it in the next phase. So some of the tools that we use to help assess readiness that I mentioned previously about some of the self-help or guided assessments is these are some of them. So AWS provides all these tools to help you test your readiness to migrate to the cloud, and also like what can and cannot be migrated to the cloud, for example. So first we have the Cloud Adoption Readiness Tool, which is called shortened as CART. This is an online self-service tool. You can do it yourself if you're curious about whether my organization, my company is ready to move to the cloud, to migrate to cloud, or say you're interested in it. This is usually the first step that customers should take. Is they do this use this CART tool to basically get a rough idea on like what they need before migrating to a cloud. It's just a very high level rough idea that you can get. You just have to answer a couple of questions, around 16 questions, and you will generate a custom report for you which can be exported to PDF format, and this will be very suitable for early stage discussions and maybe small scale migrations. Because the information provided and the feedback provided here is very high level and simplified. And then we move on to the Cloud Readiness Assessment Workshop, which is basically a one-day workshop where you have to answer around 70 questions to identify how ready you are to perform a large-scale migration to the cloud, and what are the gaps, what are the parts missing that you do not have and is needed for you to proceed to the migration smoothly. So based on what you answer, an action plan proposal will be provided to close the gaps by so this tool will generate a plan for you to basically fill in those stuff that you're lacking, that will be required for you to move and migrate to the cloud smoothly without any hiccups or any weird challenges. And lastly, we have TSO logic. So TSO logic is basically a free AWS service that will help you quickly build a migration business case. So by using data from your current infrastructure and its performance data, it will link up to your on-prem infrastructure basically, and you're providing it some sort of permissions to take a look at your on-prem infrastructure, at least from a high-level point of view. And basically it will take this data that you provided it based on your current infrastructure and its performance, and it will create basically a business case on like a comparison between the workloads running on your on-premise and if you were to run on AWS. And it also optimizes the Windows licensing by using data from your own environment. For example, if you have a couple of licenses that can be transferred over to cloud, TSO Logic will advise you on that, and so you don't have to pay for the licenses. You can actually bring your own license for some of those services. Whereas if you have licenses that can't be transferred, or maybe you want some new services that you don't have a license for, only then you will have to pay for the licenses. So TSO Logic will help you identify like which which licenses you can carry over, which you can't, those kind of things. And if for example, if your instance is constantly running at 30% utilization and it never spikes up over 50%, TSO logic will also recommend stuff like maybe cutting the instance size, the server size into half, so that when you migrate to cloud, the appropriate size is used and you won't be paying more than what you need. Because the mindset of running an infrastructure on-premise and on cloud is kind of different. On-premise, you want the extra headroom, so in case there is a sudden spike in access, for example, you have the extra headroom to play around with. Whereas on cloud, since you can scale up and down within minutes anytime you want, having the extra headroom is actually just wasting costs. You can actually save costs by provisioning just the right size instances, and when you need a bigger instance, you can just upscale, or you can scale it up or scale it out depending on what you need. And the next phase in the migration process will be Mobilize. Just a moment, let me plug in my charger. Okay, so the next phase in the migration process will be Mobilize. Mobilize meaning we use that whatever assessments and plans we had in the previous phase to help you build a more solid migration strategy that can be done, that can be applied in the migration phase later on. So first, we will use the assessment results to improve your migration readiness and planning, and also to mobilize resources. So this is basically the preparation phase for the migration. We will do some discovery and planning. Basically, we at G-AsiaPacific will do the research and planning to help you migrate to the cloud as seamlessly as possible. And if there is any services available that you can use to better optimize your infrastructure, we will recommend those as well. Say you have a database that can be run on some Amazon services like the Amazon's RDS, which is a relational database service, and it's more beneficial for you in that use case. We'll recommend those kinds of things. Next, we will set up the cloud environment, which is basically setting up all the resources, the VPCs, the virtual private clouds, the servers, the instances, all those stuff. We will set up ahead of time so that when we migrate, we can seamlessly cut over without having to worry about lacking of these resources and that resources. And the next will be skill centers of excellence, which is basically we will hand over knowledge to your team. So basically, like if your team does not have the knowledge associated to manage a cloud infrastructure, and we migrated your entire infrastructure to the cloud, we will actually provide some knowledge transfer on how this works and how everything works, and we will basically explain the entire environment to your team so that they can understand and they can operate on your new AWS environment. And then we'll also share the migration experience with your team, which is what are the challenges we faced during the migration, and how we mitigated those challenges, how we solved those challenges, how we went around those challenges. All of those will be shared with your team so that you can better understand what are the potential challenges that you may face managing your applications or your systems on the cloud environment. And we will also come up with a migration plan. This is generally for our use, but we will provide explanation on how we will conduct the migration, and we'll maybe go back and forth a few times to see if you're okay with this migration plan and it suits your requirements. This migration plan will state in detail how we will, maybe step by step, how we perform the migration and what the cutover process will be like. And then we will also come up with an operating model, which is basically a blueprint for how value will be created and delivered to target customers. What this means is basically we will state in the maybe in the earlier meetings of the Mobilize stage, we will come up with say you have a business requirement or a business goal by moving to cloud. We will come up with like how we can help you save this, how we can help you achieve this goal or this cost saving target, and we will let you know how we plan to do this and how it can be delivered to you, and how you can get that cost savings, rather than just telling you, oh, you can save costs, but you have no idea how you're saving the costs. So by providing this explanation of the operating model to you, you can actually understand better on how value will be created and delivered to you. And last of all, we have the security and compliance, which is basically ensuring that the new environment, the cloud environment, will be secure and comply with whatever compliances that you require. For example, if you need PCI DSS compliance, we can help you achieve that on AWS Cloud as well. So this part of on this slide, I'll explain to you how we determine the right migration pattern for your applications. So first, on the first panel, we have the disconnected and incomplete data. This is basically the stuff on your current environment. For example, the asset inventories, performance information, architecture. These are the stuff that we receive from your existing infrastructure, existing on-premise or cloud infrastructures that you are currently using. So we'll get all this information, and we'll use this information to basically discover and organize data. So we will take a look at the performance applications, and then we'll decide on what is the most suitable level, what is the most suitable method that we can use to migrate or apply to your applications basically. So in this case, we have these things, the 7 R's, which is basically refactor, replatform, repurchase, rehost, relocate, retain. And I believe that this slide is missing one R, which is retire. So the level of effort required increases from bottom to top. So refactor being the most effort intensive, and below retain we actually have retire, which being the least effort intensive. So based on the data we receive from your infrastructure and from you, we will put all of this together and decide on which application and which services, which hardware that you have requires which of these R's. So let's start from bottom to top. First, we have retire, which is basically decommissioning. That requires nearly no effort at all. We just decommission that application or instance depending on your requirements. Say you don't want that application anymore, or you realize that, oh, we haven't used application for the past 5 years, and why is that server even up? You can decommission it, or if the application is outdated and you have a new version of it, you can decommission the old one. Next will be retain. So retain is usually done in a hybrid cloud environment, using stuff like AWS Outpost, which is basically a family of AWS managed services that can help you deliver AWS infrastructure and AWS services to your on-premise environment. So it's mostly a hybrid cloud where you run some stuff on your AWS environment, and you also run some stuff on your on-premise, and you basically sync them up. So you retain some stuff on your on-premise rather than migrating everything to cloud. That's where the retain comes from. And then we have relocate, which is basically say relocating your VMware environment onto AWS. It's a simple lift and shift. You just take that VMware environment and move it to cloud, say running it on an EC2 instance on AWS, and it's as simple as that. And then we have rehost, which is using stuff like Cloud Endure or application migration tools. So when you rehost something, you will use some sort of migration tool to move stuff over. Basically, this is what people think of most of the time when we say migration is you use some sort of migration tool like Cloud Endure to help you move your application to say AWS Cloud. And then after rehost, we have repurchase, which is for softwares and applications that license you no longer own, or if you cannot if you're unable to migrate those licenses, to move those licenses to the cloud environment, or if you need a specific server with some specific applications that requires you to purchase it, essentially, you can apply a repurchase, which is usually done through AWS Marketplace, where you can provision like specific application like OpenVPN, for example, or Trend Micro Security onto your instances, and those will be all purchased from AWS Marketplace and charged with your AWS bill at the end of the month. And also, if the applications that you need is not available on AWS Marketplace, we can also do third-party vendors, for example. After that, we have re-platform, which is basically switching to an AWS managed service most of the time. Like I mentioned previously, if you have a database that we deem more suitable for you to move to, if you can see some benefits if you were to move it to a managed service like AWS RDS, Relational Database Service, we will advise a re-platform, and this will essentially mean that you switch from say your database running on a regular server where you have to manage the operating systems and all those stuff, to RDS, which is managed by AWS, and you just deal with the database alone. You don't have to deal with any of the patches, the updates, the operating system is all done by AWS. You just focus solely on the database itself. And lastly, we have refactoring. This generally requires some help from the application team to refactor the code. For example, if you want to apply auto-scaling or auto-healing, where your instances can scale out, or share load across regions, for example, you will need, or maybe if you were to apply auto-healing, where if your instance goes down, it will be recreated, and all the data will be retained elsewhere, let's say in a database. So to apply these sorts of auto-scaling and auto-healing, your application generally needs to be stateless, where it cannot store any state data on the application server itself, and all those data has to be stored on maybe a database or external file storage. Because if the server goes down and your application is stored on your application data is stored on the server itself, of course the data will be gone. So in this case, if you want to apply some sort of auto-scaling, we will recommend you to refactor, which is for your application team to modify the application a little so that it suits your requirements. For example, turning like a stateful application to a stateless one. And the last step of the migration process will be migrate and modernize, which is to perform the migration steps, and based on we will perform the migration steps based on the previous two phases, the plan that we have come up with, and we will then modernize, which is to optimize and fine-tune your AWS environment to a more modern one. So for the migration, for the application migration workflow, we will have the migration plan, which is we will adopt the most suitable pattern based on the migration plan. What is the most suitable schedules to migrate? Maybe you have to do it at off-peak hour, or at night when no one is using your application, and also like how long the application migration will take, and what are the requirements needed. Those are the final touch-up details. All of the major decisions are made in the previous phase. This phase is just mostly on the scheduling, what's the proper patterns to apply when migrating. And then we also select the right AWS partners and tools. The right AWS partner tools, which is basically the tools that have been made available to us as AWS partner. We will use those tools to apply to your migration to help you maybe achieve a more seamless or more smooth migration. And then next we will move on to the migrate phase, which is to actually perform the migration. We will migrate the application, and then after this migration is done, we will track your application performance. So both the customers and us will generally work together to check on the performance before and after the migration and see if there's any improvements or if uh, there's a lack in performance. Then we can fine-tune the server sizes, the scaling rules so that it matches your performance requirements. And this will be done on one instance, one server at a time, or one batch of applications at a time, and the migration will be done in waves. So for example, this application has been migrated successfully and you have say 5 applications. We'll do that five times. So we'll do those migrations one at a time for 5 times, so that we can make sure that each migration goes successfully. Because if you were to migrate all 5 at once and something goes wrong, then it will be a huge downtime for all your applications. So we generally prefer to migrate by waves, bit by bit, and make sure that everything works properly first before we continue to the next application. So AWS data transfer and hybrid cloud storage. This will be this will be the AWS services that you can use to make it easier for you to set up a hybrid environment. For example, AWS Storage Gateway, which allows you to access under the data center extensions part. You have AWS Storage Gateway, which can help you to access AWS cloud storage from your on-premise network. Then we have Amazon VPC, which is the virtual private cloud. This is where all your AWS cloud resources are hosted on. We can perform some kind of linkage, such as site-to-site VPN or the next service, which is AWS Direct Connect to your on-premise, which allows you to have a more seamless hybrid cloud environment, so you can directly access data from your AWS cloud and vice versa. And then we have AWS IAM, which is the Identity Access Management, where you can, this is basically a unified identity management service which allows you to manage who can access what in your AWS environment from this console. And it supports various security tools, such as setting up MFA, because these days any account without an MFA is generally considered not that secure. And there's also AWS Directory Service, which is basically setting up a secondary AD for your Active Directory. If you have Active Directory domain running on-prem, you can use this AWS Directory Service to set up, say like a secondary domain. And also we have AWS Ops Work. Under the VMware Cloud Migration, we have VMware Cloud on AWS, which is basically running VMware VMs on AWS. And we have AWS Outpost, which I mentioned previously, is basically a suite of AWS services which will basically help you run AWS resources and services on your on-premise environment without much configuration required from your end. And lastly, we have cloud services at the edge, which is AWS Snowball Edge and also AWS IoT Greengrass. So all of these services are on AWS, and there is even more than this. If I'm not mistaken, there's like 10 or 20-fold the number of applications on AWS. There's way more applications than this. You can take a look at what applications you need, what applications you think that you need. If you're not sure, you can and you're interested in moving to the cloud, you can come to us and we will help you decide on what services you can utilize to better improve your business. And we will move on to the next slide, which is to develop an optimization roadmap. This is basically developing an optimization plan for your migrated applications. So we split this into two parts, which is migrated applications, which are applications that are to be migrated and or recently migrated, and non-migrated applications, which are applications that are developed natively on the cloud or running on the cloud already, or even applications that have been migrated a while ago and it's considered running stable on the cloud for a couple of months. These will all be counted as non-migrated applications. So for migrated applications, what we will generally do is we will optimize the availability and performance. So we will take a look at the performance and the architecture of how it's being set up, and we will try to see if there's any way we can improve the availability of those applications, as well as if the performance is not up to your standards. Maybe the performance is a bit lacking. If the web page takes too long to load, we will take a look at those. Is the server's size enough? Is there enough CPU compute performance? Is there enough memory for your servers? Those kind of things, and then we will upgrade it and tune it according to your needs. Or maybe if there's too much performance, too much resources than what you need, say your application is just running at 30% CPU utilization all the time and it never spikes above 50%, we will tune it down, we will scale it down a little so that you don't waste your money on unnecessary costs. And then next we move to non-migrated applications. In this case, we will try to modernize it even more, not just tune the performance. We will try to re-platform and re-architect, or re-architect and refactor the application. So to re-platform and re-architect, we will generally try to evolve your application to make it say if you were to use RDS instead of database running on EC2 instances, for example. In this example, say you have a database running on VM server, EC2 being Amazon's being AWS version of their VM servers, their cloud VM servers. So say you have your database running on there, and you have your OS to manage with, your patches. You have to manage all of your all the things from the OS level above, and then also your database. We can recommend moving it to say RDS, which is a managed service, and this way you just deal with the database alone, and all the patches and maintenance can be handled by AWS. So this is what it means to like breathe new life into your applications. Basically, it's allows your application to be more modern and more scalable in the future. Next, we have re-architect and refactor, which is to split off the microservices from the monolith. Say you have a very stateful or a very monolithic application that is running on a single server, and say your database is also running the same server as your application, which is not a very modern design. It's more so we will recommend you to re-architect and refactor, which is basically decoupling your application. So you remove each microservices from the other and make sure they are independent so that they can be scaled separately. For example, you separate your front end, your back end, and your database into separate instances, separate services. So whenever your front end is facing a huge load, but your back end is doing all right, you can just scale the front end without having to scale everything at once. So this helps you save costs in a way as well. So if your database runs out of storage, you don't have to increase your entire instance storage. You can just increase the storage for your database. And say your database requires a standby instance, you can easily do this using the RDS multi-easy configuration. And also, say your backend is facing some requirements that is needed. Say your backend processing requires some sort of GPU, some sort of graphics card, or some sort of specialized instance or specialized disk storage. You just have to pay for that specific backend server rather than paying for all of it at once. So this is where using optimization on the cloud will really help you save your cost and also optimize your performance without spending too much. So after all of this is done, you will end up with a modernized application. So these kind of modernized applications will be easier to scale outwards in the future. Say if you were to expand your business, or you were to need to expand your application in the future, this will be more scalable and less complex, and takes less effort to deal with. Okay, so now we move on to cloud security, and I will pass this on to Alvin to explain more about how we deal with cloud security at G-AsiaPacific.
Hi everyone. Let me introduce myself. I'm Alvin, the Cloud Cybersecurity Consultant for G-AsiaPac. In this session, we will briefly go through the well-architected security best practices. But before that, we will start off with what has happened since the start of the year. As you can see, about 36% of our clients experience cybersecurity attacks. Actually, the rate is higher, but this 36% sustained damage from the attack, mostly from insecure cloud security configurations, some from not detecting fast enough, and others due to the vulnerabilities and implications. So why are there so many insecure configurations? Well, the process of securing your workload is quite tedious, time consuming, and requires your full attention on minor details. And it is something that people usually think is optional, but the optional comes with a heavy price tag. There are actually a few ways to get a feel of a cyber attack. You can launch a server and open up to public, wait for a few hours, and try logging in to check the amount of failed login attempts. You can see the number is mind-boggling. There are always many hobbyists scanning for open ports with enthusiasm. If there is not interesting enough, you can also take a look at your WAF log. You'll be able to see all the exploit activities people try on your application. Then you may ask, they could attack anytime from anywhere, so what do we do? Right, what we want is to reduce as much potential area of attack as possible. And this can be fulfilled with the help of the 7 design principles from the AWS well-architected security. First, you may want to start off with a strong identity foundation, because a strong identity foundation is critical in maintaining a safe cloud environment. Implement the principle of least privilege, by allowing each team member the minimum amount of access that is needed for their work. And after that, you may want to enable traceability so that you can know who has done what. Also, make sure you apply security at all layers, which means from the computer in your office all the way to the operating system, the application, and the code in, for example, your EC2 instances. Because a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Not just that, when you think of implementing security best practices, right, you may also want to consider automating it so that you can scale more rapidly and also cost effectively, and it can reduce the likelihood of human error as well. Besides that, we all know that data is very, 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 very important. So you definitely want to protect it in transit and at rest. Classify your data so that you can determine what level of security your data needs, and use mechanisms such as encryption, tokenization, and also access control where appropriate. So let's move on to the next principle. Right, people usually say sharing is caring, but not for this case. You want to keep people away from the data so that you can reduce the risk of security breaches and also loss of data. And finally, in case of anything happening, make sure to prepare for security events. Run incident response simulations with your own team, or have an incident management tool with automation to increase your speed for detection, investigation, and also recovery. It's better to over prepare than to under prepare. Right. I hope you're able to understand a little bit more on the AWS security best practices, and I shall pass back to Miguel. Thanks.
Okay, so now I will be continuing my talk on the case studies, which is basically our past experiences on helping our customers migrate to AWS Cloud. We have selected two customers out of all the customers that we have helped migrate to AWS Cloud. The customers that we chose are TF Value Mart and Toyota Astra Motors. Firstly, I will talk about the case study for TF Value Mart. So TF Value Mart is one of Malaysia's leading hypermarket chains. They started off in the 1990s, and they have 39 stores across the country at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. And their goal is to innovate and provide low prices for their customers, and that's their main business model, is by providing low prices for the customers. So to do this, their entire supply chain, their infrastructure should be low as well, so that they can not pass the cost on to the customers. They can keep the cost. If they can keep their operating costs low, they can also reflect that reduction in cost on their end products that they sell at their hypermarkets. So the challenge for them, for TF Value Mart, is that we have to keep their costs low in line with their business strategy, and they want a very lean IT team consisting of just 3 members. They want as small as possible of IT team to minimize their cost, and most of their branches are spread out in tier 2 and tier 3 towns, which is more on the outskirts and not in very huge cities. So this will make performance monitoring quite difficult, because previously, if you were to host their on-premise infrastructure without any connectivity, any centralized connectivity or management, you would have to send the data manually via the internet, or you have to go to their data center, their office itself at those towns, and actually retrieve the data. And most of the time, this is a very it's not a convenient task for them. So the solution we proposed to them was to migrate to AWS Cloud. If I'm not mistaken, they were hosting application and a server, a DB server, an ERP server, a couple of member management, and membership management servers and databases, those kind of stuff. So those servers would have to be migrated to AWS Cloud. And after we migrated to AWS Cloud, we actually helped them cut their costs by leveraging the savings plan provided by AWS, which is a method that you can use to save your costs depending on your use case. There are lots of savings plan in AWS, such as saving your cost if you were to use a specific service for a minimum amount of time per month, and also there is a flexible pricing model for AWS compute services. Other than that, we also proposed the AWS Virtual Private Network to establish a secure connection from TF Value Mart's on-premises servers running in their stores to the AWS cloud. So this way we can keep track and monitor of all their resources across all their stores, all from the AWS cloud console. So the benefits that they were seeing after they have migrated to AWS cloud is 35% savings in compute costs. So they actually save 35% of their cost on compute, which is their servers, compared to running it on as compared to running it on premises. In addition, it actually helped them double their it helped them double the number of stores, because now they can easily monitor all their stores from the AWS console and their servers running on AWS. So it makes it easy for them to expand new stores without having to do complicated setups on the store end, and it also increase their revenue by about 60%. In addition to that, there was the cutover was very seamless. There was no downtime. Their security was improved because they took advantage of some of the AWS security services like firewall and all those other security services, CloudTrail monitoring, VPC flow logs, which logs the access to their AWS account so that they can keep track of who is accessing what. And all of this adds up together into a very seamless transition from on-premise to cloud. So there were only benefits and no downsides. Basically, it seems like they were pretty happy with the solution, and currently we are still working with them to provide them support on their daily requirements and requests. The next case study that I'll be talking about is Toyota Astra Motors, which is established in 1971 in Jakarta, Indonesia. This is a joint venture between Toyota Motor Corporation and Astra International. So this is an Indonesian company. It's not local from Malaysia. So the vision of Toyota Astra Motors is to be the best managed corporation, to be one of the best managed corporations in the Asia-Pacific region, and be a socially responsible corporation, and also to be environmentally friendly. So their challenge was that their existing systems, like I previously mentioned, was considering they were a huge corporation. They have lots of servers everywhere running various operating systems. They have a diverse infrastructure. Some of their servers are running on Microsoft Azure, different cloud service, and also some of them were running on-premise, and it was all kind of a huge mess because it was all running on separate servers, and even their own IT team has many person in charge for different projects and different applications, so they have trouble communicating which application is using what servers, and also like for example in the case of migrating Toyota Astra Motors to AWS, they actually face the issue of having different applications relying on each other. So by taking down one of them, you might affect the other applications as well. So we did have some trouble trying to figure out how we should migrate all of this to AWS. And on top of that, they were spending unnecessary double licenses to duplicate another set of servers on their DR side. So they were already running a DR disaster recovery strategy, and their strategy was very costly because they have to basically create a second set of servers almost identical to their running production ones, and they were paying for the second set of licenses, say for Windows licensing and all the application licensing, on the second set of servers as well, and that was very costly. It literally just doubled their cost. So the solution we provided them was again to migrate to AWS, and for Toyota Astra Motors, initially they were more keen on running on the hybrid cloud model, so they were running some stuff on premise and running some stuff in AWS, and we created a site-to-site VPN to link up and sync up some of their databases. But over time, they started moving more and more stuff to the cloud. So it was a phase-by-phase migration. we migrated one application at a time. So what we did for their disaster recovery is that we adopted Cloud Endure disaster recovery solution on AWS. This allows us to seamlessly fail over and fail back. We have conducted a few fail over and fail back drills, a few fail over drills to the Cloud Endure disaster recovery environment, which was also running on AWS. So we actually managed to fail over to the AWS environment, and then after failing over, we actually attempted failing back to their on-premises environment. And so far, it seems like the previous drills have been successful, and Cloud Endure has really improved their spending, as they no longer have to provision a second set of servers, a second set of licenses. Cloud Endure will still provision servers, but we selected a smaller instance size than what they actually would use if they were to create a disaster recovery plan on premise. So in this case, what happens is that after we fail over and we realize that the servers that are on the DR side is not up to spec to handle their task, we can immediately upgrade it upon failing over. We can just upgrade the instance specs, and then the problem is solved. You don't have to install any hardware yourselves or deal with anything. So while the DR site is not in use, the servers can be kept cheap by reducing the size to as small as possible, since they are just running as a backup and is not in use unless the production environment is facing some issues. The third thing we did is that we improved their RTO and RPO at the same time, achieving better TCO by reducing double servers and license costs. So by migrating their environment to AWS, we actually managed to cut a lot of costs by scaling up and down their servers and using multiple AWS services. For example, we utilize AWS service called Elastic Beanstalk, which helps to manage all their makes their application servers easy to manage, as it automatically provisions load balancers, database, as well as servers. And these servers can be auto scaled according to scaling rules to make it so that when the amount of load on the servers is low, the servers will scale down automatically to say just one server. But as the load increases throughout the day, the amount of servers that are running for the application will increase. Maybe it spins up another 4 instances to handle the load, and then after the peak hour is over, it will automatically scale down as needed. So all of this will be done automatically, and it's all handled by AWS without you having to even lift a finger. And the benefits is basically to achieve a better TCO, which is a total cost of ownership, move faster, as they can easily push out updates, changes to their applications without much efforts, without having to deal with their on-premise hardware. They enhance their agility, their performance, and elasticity, their risk improvement, and deliver more reliability to their customers. So what this means is that we actually exceeded their performance requirements, because when they were moving to AWS Cloud, they were actually skeptical on the performance of applications running on the cloud, because they were afraid that there might be some sort of latency. But by utilizing the AWS, the right AWS region, which is the Southeast Asia region, we managed to provide them as low as possible latency for their services, as well as utilizing the CloudFront CDN, AWS CloudFront, which is AWS brand of CDN. And this allows them to have what this does is it uses edge servers to cache web requests on the CloudFront's edge servers. So this means that if many users are accessing this web page from this particular region, those those videos and images from that are being accessed will be cached onto the edge server closest to where the customer is accessing, closest to where the user is accessing from, and this means that they get as low as possible latency compared to having the request go all the way to the server and then coming back. So on top of reducing latency using CloudFront CDN, we also managed to reduce the load on the server as now that the users are accessing images and videos from the cache, and on their e-commerce website there are various images of motor vehicles, of cars. Since they are pulling all these images from the CDN, the CloudFront edge servers, the server does not have to work as hard to serve all those images to each and every person who accesses the web application. So in this case, it actually reduces the load on the app server itself, and we can keep the application server smaller than it would be if we were only using the server and not any CDN. And lastly, we provided additional reliability by providing all sorts of security enhancements and support in case of a downtime. We also implemented high availabilities in some of the more critical applications. And all of this being said, they seem to be very happy with the services, and they are still continuing to migrate a couple more applications and also develop some cloud native applications on AWS Cloud at the moment. So that is all from my end. I'll pass this on to Cindy.
Thanks Miguel and Alvin for the sharing. Now I would like to share what are the specific offerings from G-AsiaPacific. We are going to provide free consultations, free assessment, and also free POC to the audience. If you have any inquiry or you are interested, feel free to drop us an email, call us, or visit our website and our social media: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Thank you for spending your time today, and please leave your question in the chat and we will respond to you right immediately. Thank you everyone, and hope you have a nice day.